All right, how are you doing? He's hoping that all is well with you from there, wherever part of the world you're watching us. Of course, a few minutes after 9, but of course, this is that particular time when we get to meet right here for In Focus. And my name, as always, is Eugene Anangwe. And of course, tonight on the program, we're going to take a focus or a look into the happenings down south. And of course, we have seen the resignations that have actually shaken the continent in one way or another. We want to analyze that and just talk about that in a minute right here on the program. Of course, we'll be looking at the resignation of Jacob Zuma as South Africa's president. And of course, we'll also take a look at Zimbabwe, of course, with the late Morgan Tsvangirai, the leader of the MDC, the opposition party MDC. We'll be looking at what it will be like, of course, looking at the politics of that country without this man Tsvangirai. And of course, the Ethiopian Prime Minister also resigning. We'll be asking ourselves a few questions right here on the program. But before we get deeper into the conversation, let's take a look at the presidency of Jacob Zuma, who has bowed to pressure in South Africa. His presidency at a glance. This is the information that we have as far as Jacob Zuma is concerned. He was elected president in May 2009 by the National Assembly. Of course, his approval ratings were respectable in 2011, hitting 64%. But these ratings did drop drastically by almost half, going to 36% over the next 4 years. But of course, also public trust in Zuma declined to 34% in the same period. And his government also did not have mostly the negative parts, but it also had some positive parts with his approval ratings as far as the performing in the area of improving or the distribution of welfare is concerned, hitting 84%. His government did score a mere 20% in fighting corruption. This is seen as the backbone or as the major reason as to why his ratings went down and his eventual removal from office. He scored 22% in addressing inequality and, of course, performed dismally in reducing crime, managing immigration and the economy. You all remember the days of the xenophobic attacks in South Africa. But, of course, between 2011 and 2015, 48% of South Africans saw their country as a full democracy, dropping from 66%. 66% did see their country as a full democracy, but between these years, 2011 and 2015, they felt that their country was not a full democracy. We'll be able to break that down right here in the program. August 2017, he survived a vote of no confidence despite the ballot being held in secret. And of course, he actually survived 9 censure motions. This man, Jacob Zuma, will be understanding why he did not see the writing on the wall then. February 6th, 2018, he did survive yet another day as head of state. ANC called off a special NEC meeting where his fate was due to be decided. And of course, he did resign on Wednesday under pressure from his own party, the ANC. And of course, immediately he was succeeded as president by his deputy Cyril Ramaphosa on Thursday. Let me bring on our panelists on the program. We have Dr. Christopher Kayumba, not new on the program. Thank you for joining us, Dr.
Thank you for inviting me.
Also with us for the very first time is Dr. Eric Lushavandi. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ananga.
Of course, Lonzen Rujira is not new to the program as well. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Lonzen. Let's try and digest what we've just seen as far as South Africa is concerned. I know most people were wondering, you know, if we've seen others deeding it. Jacob Zuma also did it. And for some people it was a surprise, but for others, long overdue. This is something that was seen as coming. Why do you feel, Dr. Kayumba, Jacob Zuma did not see these signs early, surviving these censure motions 9 times and still staying there? Probably someone would say he should have seen the signs and decided to leave then.
That is a very tricky question. You know, that would require going into the head, into the thinking of President Jacob Zuma. Actually, for people who even follow South African affairs very closely, you would even see the signs even before he became president. You remember he was removed as vice president in 2005 by President Thabo Mbeki. Then that fight of attempted removal as vice president because of allegations of corruption led to the censure and the forced resignation of Thabo Mbeki in 2008. So Jacob Zuma's struggles, allegations that he knew that somebody he raped he didn't accept rape, but he said that he slept with this lady knowing that she has AIDS, and then he said he took a shower. So you are asking, why didn't he see the signs before and resign? It is difficult to know, but I think it relates to what power does to some people. Because even the day he resigned, he first gave an interview where he was lamenting that he doesn't understand why they are forcing him to go right now, asking what is so urgent, and then trying to justify that it is understandable that his predecessor, Thabo Mbeki, resigned because it was understandable. But for him, it is not understandable. So I can't put a finger as to why he didn't see the signs. But even when you understand the political system in South Africa, for him to have claimed before the resignation that he will not go, you can see that he was trying to hold on to something that is already going. Yes. So I don't think I have an answer to your question why he didn't see the signs, but I think it has something to do with the nature of power. And probably he thought that because he's a freedom fighter, because they had handled him with the kid gloves, and because he had survived many times, probably they would allow him to finish his mandate. Yes. He was even negotiating 3 to 6 months. Right. But I think he didn't see the writing on the wall that once Cyril Ramaphosa, his vice president, took over the leadership of ANC, the hold on to ANC as a political party was no longer in the hands of Zuma. And one of the reasons he survived for 9 times, it was because he was at the helm of the leadership. Yes, he controlled ANC, and the political system is such that once you have majority in parliament as it is for ANC, nobody can remove him. Right. Probably Dr. Eric has an answer for me, since you say you do not have an answer to why he did not see the signs earlier. Dr. Eric, as you answered that, if you do have an answer, I want you to also share or put some light on this phenomenon that we are seeing now of the resignation, the moving out of power willingly, or sometimes, you know, just deciding to say, you know what, I've decided that I want to leave power with immediate effect. This is what Jacob Zuma did say when he was leaving office. Of course, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia as well, you know, has just seen that things are not going well. He decided to leave. Of course, we'll have a discussion on that right here. But I want you to talk to us about this phenomenon that we're seeing. And some people are saying, what is really going on? Someone slapped me. Am I in Africa? For those who have been always saying that, no, African leaders never leave power.
Thank you. And I thank you for the invitation. And I'm happy to be part of this talk. To understand those moves, one, we can't understand it if you don't put it in the context. When you took or you consider the 90s, if the struggle for democracies and so on, but also in particular South Africa and Meles Zenawi in Ethiopia, and the long, long legacy of Mugabe in Zimbabwe, you can look at one factor, one cross-cutting factor, which is strong liberation wars and the strong leaders who led these revolutions. From this generation, we are not moving to a new generation, but we are moving for a new context. It goes fast. One, when you look at Ethiopia case and Zuma case, you can see that all these guys have been closer to big leaders like Meles Zenawi, Mandela, and so on. But at a given time, they took distance from them, then they took power through these elections and so on. To understand this in a democratic processes in Africa, maybe you could say this is new. I can say no. One, it's about understanding profile of people and how they are linked to the big, big ideas, strong ideologies of parties, linked to the liberation movement. So the social basis and the ideology is very strong. So people are very nostalgic of looking at the past, and they want to keep it as it was with Mandela, with Meles Zenawi, and all that. But on the other side is to look how they are stepping in a new context, where there is a kind of consciousness and and a kind of popular movement of claiming for accountability and so on.
Right, right.
This we can look at it in South Africa, where people are very nostalgic to look at the past, the unity, the equality, justice, as a legacy of Mandela. But Zuma jumping in, and when you look at Meles Zenawi movement and this developmental state, and pro-communist and the socialist movement, the shift from there to capitalism, it's about to look at the political parties themselves.
It's the political parties.
Yeah, how it functions and struggle for power. Something similar from both cases, but what is unique from South Africa is the internal cohesion of ANC. I could not say that Zuma is surprised, like as strictly surprised. There was already signs from Mandela up to Mbeki, or struggle he had, and himself. It is not new and it is not surprising.
So it's something that should not have surprised him at all.
But to know that they were able really to push him at this point, this is surprising.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Dr. Lonzen, I mean, I see you listening keenly here, and I want to read your thoughts and read your mind on this, especially on this phenomenon, of course, because you know, some people are saying that this could be our own sort of kind of what we saw in the Arab Spring. You know, when we're seeing these big names, especially Jacob Zuma. Of course, we saw with Robert Mugabe as well. He did give in to pressure and say, you know what, I'm leaving. How would you describe this? What is going on right now? I saw someone tweeting and saying, when I grow old, I will tell my children that I lived to see the day when, you know, leaders from Zimbabwe, President Mugabe, you know, resigned from office. We've seen Zuma also do the same, and Ethiopia as well. What would you call this?
Well, first of all, I think Africans have to be disabused of the idea that disintegration of the state, and that is manifested in dysfunction of the leadership, is something positive. The idea that, you know, there's a president who is being fired or stepping down, or it's nothing to celebrate about, you know. The conversation about first of all, these three events are not related, so it is difficult. You can't really say that there's any form of sub-Saharan spring going on. They're unrelated. They are expressions of different manifestations, and the only thing that ties them is there's an ideological, a global ideological conversation that's taking place, a shift that's taking place that is tying all of them. Actually, it's tying a global, it's a global shift in questions of ideology, where societies feel in terms of identifying with the leadership in place. So globally it is taking place, and it can't be reduced to just Africans. Now, what is that global question? In Ethiopia, there's the triumph of the ruling party and the success it has had has placed a lot of pressure to the international liberal ideology that about the function of the state in the economy and the political, the practice of the government in terms of the political, how it governs. So Ethiopia has challenged the dominant narrative about how the state should be run, the same way with Rwanda. So these countries have challenged the liberal narrative, and as a result, there is a lot of liberalism that has been pressuring the regime, the government in South Africa to quote-unquote reform. So that is a global conversation about the form of government that should be in place. In South Africa, what is taking place is that the ANC is a political organization that is rooted in ideas. It's strongly rooted in ideas. And these ideas are reflected in competing positions that were that in jail, when they were in jail, there are two camps in jail. When the generation of leadership was in jail, the two camps were ideologically at odds. We have the side that was with Mandela, and you have the side that is with Black Conscious Movement, the Steve Biko, and so on. So we have two competing narratives about how South African society should be dominated. One is capitalist leaning, another is socialist leaning. That struggle has never been resolved in South Africa. That is why I'm telling you today, if Mandela was president today, he would have had different motions of vote of no confidence, and he would have been impeached.
Why would you say that?
Because that conversation is unresolved. And as long as the structural question about, when ANC got power, it deviated from the dominant ideology to which society was aspiring, the aspirations of society. And that was, unfortunately, the wing that was most popular is not the wing that was bequeathed political power at independence. And so the socialist-leaning trade union capitalist Mandela wing.
Right.
So the manifestation, I think, is about the confrontation about which side should prevail. And that's what I'm telling you, that as long as the structural apartheid is not disrupted in South Africa, whoever will come, and I think Ramaphosa will also be impeached.
Dr. Kayumba, I mean, is he making sense? I mean, when you listen to that, and of course, when you come into this sense of the model of leadership that we have in South Africa, and the kind of models we have in our political parties right here, where you find a national official or a government official, citizens complaining about how corrupt they are, that is when you see probably the pressure coming from the citizens first, and the parties protecting them, and then when they resort into the cocoons of their tribes to say that I'm under attack because I am from this particular tribe. But what we see in ANC, where the party recalls you, and you have no right of saying, what we see in some of the democracies that we have, of saying that I was elected by the people. I am the people's president, for lack of a better word. It is the people who voted for me, and the party has no right to recall me. And probably also, if you're trying to understand it even better, most of the political parties, the leadership of those political parties, you find that the president of the country is sort of the leader of that particular political party. Would they be able to carry out such a thing that we've seen the ANC do?
Four things. First, if you look at what is happening in Ethiopia, and what is happening in what happened in South Africa, and what happened in Zimbabwe, it is internally generated. It is internally generated. If you look at the demonstrations that have been going on in Ethiopia for the last 3 years, that have that led to the imprisonment of over 700 political prisoners that the Ethiopian Prime Minister was talking about, that is not something that was generated from outside the borders of Ethiopia. If you look at the accusations against Zuma, even the reason the Prime Minister of Ethiopia gave for resigning, he said he's resigning to allow democratic reforms so that the country can have sustainable peace. He is not alluding to any external forces. If you look at the accusations against Zuma for the last 9 years, it has been about corruption. It has been about misrule. It has been about unemployment, youth unemployment. There is nothing about ideology. If you look at what happens in Zimbabwe, in Zimbabwe, I agree with Ronze, what is happening in Zimbabwe and in these countries, they are driven by internal forces, but what happened in Zimbabwe was a coup. It was dressed, the soldiers and the media tried, because Mugabe was hated, they tried to dress it properly, but it was a coup. What happened in South Africa was democratic. That is how their political system works. What is surprising is Ethiopia. So while globally we are having a retreat of democracy and a liberal democracy having trouble, where you have populist politicians raising in Europe, in America. That is not what is happening in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, in Ethiopia. Secondly, none of the leaders we're talking about has been ousted, has been removed by the citizens. They have been removed because of the pressures of the elite from their own political parties. Zuma is thrown out by his own political party, the National Executive Committee. But South Africans have been demonstrating against him.
Right.
He didn't bow to that pressure, but he bowed to the pressure of the elite because he knows the electoral system. You are talking about that Zuma is elected by the citizens. In South Africa, the political system is such that it is closed party list where the majority political party, the ordinary person votes for MPs.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Then the majority,
that model.
Then the majority political party, parliament elects the president. And the parliament can also impeach or initiate a vote of no confidence.
Right.
Number 3, I agree also that in South Africa there are structural challenges that ANC inherited. There are also 10, if you are showing the figures, if you look at the figures, 10% of the population, largely whites, own 90% of the economy. That has not been changed. But the current struggles in South Africa, the reason Zuma has been removed has nothing to do with an ideological build-up of that country. It has something to do with what he did as a leader.
Right.
And final, of course, it would be a mistake for us to say that what is happening in these 3 countries, seeing on social media, people are talking about a possible Southern Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa Arab Spring. No, what is happening is unique to these countries, and it also has nothing to do with what we citizens or the citizens in these countries are doing, although, like in Ethiopia, it is emanating from the challenges they have, and that's why, for me, what happened in these countries demonstrates that the idea that the citizens rule, is a farce. Because it is the elite who rule. In South Africa, the citizens have been demonstrating, they never managed to remove Zuma. But when the elite washed their hands of him
and said enough is enough,
he resigned. In Zimbabwe, it has been the country has been going south, being destroyed economically, lost international image. They held elections and it never changed Mugabe. But when the elite in ZANU-PF, particularly the military, said you have to change, when they got annoyed of him, they just removed him. The same thing is happening in Ethiopia.
Right.
If you look at Ethiopia, the whole parliament is dominated by the ruling party. So while Desalegn Haile Mariam is going to be removed, the person who is going to replace him is from his own political party. It's not going. Nobody is going to come in from the will of the ordinary person. The person who is going to replace him is going to be just like Zuma, is going to come from the wishes of the elite.
Is it true, Lonzen? Do you agree? The elites are the ones who are actually calling the shots. And what is the risk of having such kind of a model, within the political parties? Of course, having that strength to be able to recall the president and replace them with someone else, as Dr. Kayumba is saying.
There's no question. Everywhere in the world, there is no society in the world where it is not the elite who are holding power. It is a global phenomenon. In fact, that is how societies are managed. So now, the question is, what makes the elites behave this way or the other way? And I'm saying that the elites in South Africa are able to behave the way they do because the unresolved question allows them the privilege to throw around whoever leader comes comes in.
Yes.
As long as that question remains unresolvable, they will have the authority or the legitimacy to toss around whoever leader will come in. That's why I'm telling you, Ramaphosa was also likely to be deposed. And as far as the global ideological question that exists,
Yes.
when Zuma was about to become president,
Yes.
The markets, the financial markets were quote unquote concerned. Financial markets, I wonder who this is. But anyways, so Zuma, what did Zuma do? And this is the question, unresolved question. When they said that the financial markets were worried, they're talking about whether the fundamental structural problem should be touched or left alone. Those are the markets. Now, because the threat was that Zuma was going to come and mess up with the structural structure of the economy, and by reformulating, reconfiguring the structure of the economy, you're also reconfiguring opportunities. And that's how you address the question that he raised about 90% of the economy being in 10% of the hands. If you don't dismantle the economic structure, you cannot reorient the opportunities that come with it. Now, what Zuma did is he made a global tour, started to tour the international capitals. He went to UK, London, he went to US, Washington, he went to Paris, he went to calm their nerves down.
He was also in Kenya. Almost the same time.
Yeah, but he didn't go there to calm markets.
Yes. You want to say Kenya was such an irrelevant market that you would not...
don't try to interrupt the point
Okay.
I'm making.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
So here's the thing. Zuma went across the major capital cities to reassure them that he's not going to structurally mess with the structure of the economy. As a result, it didn't give the opportunity to the RNC to reorient the structure of the economy, and as a result, the problems that were inherited from the apartheid system in the economic terms remained, and they continue to be there. As long as those questions continue to be there, any elite that will be in power will be susceptible to manipulation, and they will not have the foundation required to ensure they last their full term. So I'm telling you, Ramaphosa is also likely to undergo all kinds of vetoes of no confidence.
And when you talk
votes of no confidence.
When you talk of Ramaphosa, of course, some people say Zuma's, administration, and in many cases, at some point, even defended him in certain instances. And so, I just want to hear from you, Dr. Eric. Looking at this from an outsider's perspective, I want to understand how should the common Mwananchi interpret what's going on in South Africa. When they see this happening, they saw it in Zimbabwe, they may not be able to have all the time and the detail to go deeper into what you gentlemen are saying, but how can they interpret it? What sort of message do you think this is sending out here as far as Africa is concerned, as leaders are concerned?
Allow me to maybe to have a comment on what is discussed here around the structural problems and the incapacity of new leaders to respond, and maybe and predict already that people can step in the same situation. I don't think that in politics there are unresolved issues. Issues are not static, are always changing. But what is changing is the capacity of new leaders to adapt to the fundamental values and principles and ideologies to respond to the new demand of the society in terms of social equality and economic and political imperatives. This is the first point to understand. People are still attached to these big ideas, big values, and so on. Those ideas which led to the revolutions and the liberation. Now, the new leaders, the challenge they had is to respond to the movement, to the new moves since 90s, and particularly 94, when you look at both cases. Coming back to the point, one is to understand the role of individuals on power. Second, and this is new maybe to understand, it's about the role of political parties, the elite perspective. I agree that this is new, different from all Arab Springs and the other movement, which is very popular and so on. This is new because political parties are the ones which are sitting and saying the interest of the party prevails than the interest of one individual. And this is very important in politics, that people can't be stronger than institutions, and particularly when it comes about abusing. But still, the social base is fundamental in politics. It means it's about majority and on power since 10 years, 20 years after liberation. The last point is to say what we can learn from all this is to say, is it just external influences as we could see in Africa? We are not seeing it. It is internal dynamics and political party dynamics. It means what? It means people are put under accountability to say there's substantial issues you are failing to address. This is case of maybe Ethiopia. You say you promise this and the promises, but security,
you are not able to deliver.
You are not able to deliver.
Yes. And
internally, they say, okay, take the initiative. It can come from him himself, but I don't think so. Another movement is say, those are the fundamental issues for our society. You are not capable to respond to that. Is it the capacity of the only leader or the members of the political party in power? But what is very important, it is not just populist movement. It is based on real and measurable indicators of governance system.
Right.
Look at economy, look at Africa, South Africa, for example. There have been many evaluation and interpellation on, look at corruption, bribes, and so on, sex abuse, businesses. All these have been announced before. This is why I'm saying it is not surprise at all. But he didn't estimate the capacity of the ANC
in coming to deal with him.
To deal with him and to dismiss him. This is the point.
Dr. Kayumba, yes, and even as you come in, I want to understand, I mean, because I mentioned this earlier on, as far as back in the eastern part of the world, East Africa, when we look at political parties that we have, I said earlier on, mostly you'll find that the leaders of these political parties are mostly the ones who are in power. For example, if you go in Kenya, the Jubilee Party, you have Uhuru Kenyatta up there. If you come here in Rwanda, the RPF, you have President Paul Kagame. If you go to Uganda, the NRM, you know, Burundi, you know, same scenario in most cases. So how would these political parties be able to carry out something almost similar to what the ANC has been able to do, with their leaders being the ones in power? Are they able to do this practical, this viable? Are they? But you know, this party does not agree with what you're doing as the president, and we believe that you're taking the country in the wrong direction. Are they able to do this?
No, they are not able, and they are not able because the political system in these countries does not work the way the political system and the electoral system works in South Africa. In Kenya, you have a majoritarian type of electoral system, whereby the citizens, the voter directly elects who decides who is going to be a president, and wins by a simple majority, you know, 50% and one vote. The same thing in Tanzania and in Uganda. The electoral system is such that it is winner takes all. The citizens directly vote for the president. The same thing here in Rwanda and in Burundi. In South Africa, it is not a majoritarian political system. It is a proportional, closed list type of electoral system, whereby the citizens vote for MPs. And the political party that has the majority MPs automatically elects a president. And because of the rules, the electoral rules within the ANC, the president of ANC becomes the candidate for president. That is why even with the replacement of Jacob Zuma, Cyril Ramaphosa was the only candidate for ANC. They didn't, even the opposition did not dare to put up a candidate because they knew that candidate would be defeated. So the issue of deciding who becomes a president in South Africa is an issue, as I said, of the elite, of the MPs they decide. In Kenya, in Rwanda, in Burundi, in Uganda, in Tanzania, it is not like that. In Ethiopia, the system is almost like it is in South Africa. It's like that the prime minister is not directly elected by the people, right. but the political party with a majority MPs elects the prime minister. So the issue, therefore, that we are facing is not the same. Me, I actually think that the most important question we should ask, in my view, is what is the problem in each of these countries? Right. Because the problem in each of these countries is not the same. The problem in South Africa, there is the broader national problem that my friends were talking about, right. That has to do with the structure of the economy and who has what, whereby because of the apartheid and the historical takeover by the Afrikaners, where the state under apartheid deliberately gave resources to a minority, that structural condition has not been resolved. But the problem in South Africa currently that led to the forced resignation of Zuma has nothing to do with the structural economic dominance of a minority. It has to do with the particular policies of Zuma, particularly to do with corruption, personal corruption. Currently, I have never had a leader whereby, and of course the institutions in South Africa are very, very independent. That is why he could not manipulate. Even some people were saying that he's delaying his resignation, trying to negotiate an exit where he would be forgiven. But that is not possible because the law does not provide for that. So the question in South Africa has to do with the character of Zuma, corruption, poor governance. It is not related to democracy. In Zimbabwe, as I mentioned, the military took over. The constitution in Zimbabwe does not provide for that the military can intervene when they think that the president is not doing his job. So therefore, the question in Zimbabwe is a democratic question. And if you read what is happening in Ethiopia, the prime minister himself said he is resigning such that democratic reforms can take place. That means he is even personally admitting. When I was coming here, I read his tweet apologizing that in 2012, when these demonstrations started, that he said that there were no political prisoners. And now he's admitting they were political prisoners. And he said last week he released them. So even in Ethiopia, while, of course, I know that as a developmental state, there are people who think the problem in our countries is not democracy. That once you develop, once you allow leaders to develop their economies, and you ignore democracy. But as the Bible says, people do not eat only bread and butter. The Bible says people do not feed on only depend only on bread. So if you deny people the food of the mind, even in Libya. So I think the problem, therefore, in Ethiopia is a mismatch between the achievements of development, the fruits of development, and a democratic deficit. And any leader who does not address that, something that is even identified by the resigning prime minister, is going to face a problem.
Kind of problem. I'm going to read a few tweets. Of course, we have them on our screen right here. And of course, when I'm reading that, I'll be able to definitely just share a bit of the information that we have already right here. Let's take a look at the tweets that we have. You're tweeting using the hashtag InFocus RW. I have Redemptor who says that this is a must watch. This is the edited edition, of course. Let's take a look at the new ones that we have over here, of course. Let me see. How do we do this? Okay, we go back here and we search the hashtag InFocus RW. We look for the latest tweets that have been able to come. Arthur Ugamba says, my question is, will there be change in those problems that brought up these resignations? This is what he's saying. I mean, very quickly, Lonzen, do you think the resignation of Jacob Zuma, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, will it bring change? Do you think it will bring any change?
South Africa, I already told you it will not. And the reason I told you it will not is because the problem is structural. And I'm telling you that Kayumba says that Zuma was so corrupt, and as a result, he faced all these votes of no confidence. Of course, it didn't help him that he was corrupt, but Mbeki was not. And Mbeki was, as we know, removed from power as a result of being recalled. And I'm telling you that the same fate that Mbeki faced is the same fate that Zuma faced, is the same fate that Ramaphosa is going to face.
Can we bet on that?
Generally, you know I win bets with you, right? This is a record
bet on that.
I win
if
bets
Ramaphosa
with you.
Will also be...
If Ramaphosa does not put courage, if he is not a courageous politician who is able to address the structural problem at a cost of the interest of international capital, he will face the same consequences.
He'll face the same consequences. Let's see, Abdulaziz Murenzi says that this new situation of resigning along Africa, it is all about the people's choice, but sometimes I doubt on foreigners' involvement. I believe that we Africans would be wise enough to make right decisions. This is what he says, right decisions. I believe that we Africans will be able to wise enough to make right decisions. It goes so fast. Mugabe, Zuma, Mariam, then who's next? Who do you think is going to be next? Dr. Eric, do you see, can you predict who would be next in the list of the people who will be resigning?
I reserve myself.
You reserve yourself?
Oh, no.
You know, I think there's something important I needed to respond to.
Yes.
I partly agree with Kayumba's analysis about the Bible, because I really can't stand here and start to argue with the Bible. But what I'm going to argue about is the analysis that the problem in Ethiopia is about democracy. I think democracy is not the primary driver of the conflict in Ethiopia. What is happening in Ethiopia is that the constitution of Ethiopia allowed an ethnic it is an ethnic, administratively, the structure of the state in Ethiopia, there are administrative entities that are ethnically based.
So it's an ethnic issue
yes,
going on.
The constitution elevated ethnicity by giving it the currency as and then when the conversation that when you give currency to ethnicity in one realm, and then you come and you because once you have legitimized ethnicity as a principle for political discourse, then you come in the international in the national level, and the people want to see the same ethnic quotas manifest themselves. So you start to begin to talk about ethnicity. So it's about whether the prime minister should be of the Oromo people, of the Tigray people, or of the Amara people. That is the conversation. That is the basing, the social and economic transformation that is taking place in Ethiopia. So the legitimization in ethnic decentralization of ethnicity as a legitimate point of discourse is coming to bite Ethiopia. And that is really what's taking place. It's not about democracy.
Right. But of course, in Ethiopia, people have been wondering, because Ethiopia has been seen as a very, economically growing kind of country in this part of the world. Double-digit growth. Of course, this has slowed down in the past few weeks because of the clashes that have been going on there. But when you look at these things that Lonzen is saying and some of the analysis that you read as far as democracy is concerned, governance is concerned, then you wonder, what is it then that they've been doing right to have their economy grow in that sense that we've been able to see out there? Dr. Eric.
Yeah, for Ethiopia, he raised a good point, and it's very important to know this system, which is the power distribution is based on ethnicity, even the whole structure of ethnicity or ethnic majority versus political majority. What is the failure in this system in developmental processes is the capacity of educating people. It's about political education, which goes with social justice and access and all rights respected to every categories at the point that all members of the society feel to be integrated in the process. And this is not tangible, in fact, at the end. It's not just building houses or economics and so on. It's about consciousness and the capacity to be really responsible citizens and to take on political majority, which leads to the responsible citizens. So the developmental state, it fails when it is not including
the people.
The people and including every category in this process.
Right. Let's see more tweets that have been coming in. Of course, one of them from Jean-Luc. He says, I believe the resignation of Zuma was as long-run results of his very own committed political allegations, but South Africans have no guarantee that it will not be recalled again on Ramaphosa's regime. Of course, this one is sort of agreeing with what Lonzen has just said right there. Vincent Kayumba says that where were such elites? We need their wider functionality to log out long-standing Africa disease. Now people IR, which is leaders, where have they been? Where have these elites been? Of course, this is a question that people have been asking. Why recall Zuma when he just had, I think, 1 year to go? Where were they? Why now? This is a very important question. Where were these elites before?
You know, again, these elites were still under the leadership of Zuma. Zuma was still the president of the Republic and the president of ANC. You see, you know, these elites also do. These elites also do calculation.
Yes.
You know, if they can still depend on you when they know that you are still in charge.
Yes.
And they know that you're going to be around for some time,
yes,
then they are less inclined to remove you. But once the leadership of ANC was taken over by Cyril Ramaphosa, and then they knew, these elites, they know that within a year he will go. So whom do they listen to? The guy who is going to take over from a corrupt leader, or the corrupt leader whom they know that his political future is gone? The same thing is also happening in Ethiopia. Since 2012, after the death of Meles Zenawi,
yes,
you know, all the analysis I have seen so far are saying that while the current prime minister who has resigned, some people assume he has been in charge, but he has never been in charge because of the structure and nature of power in South Africa. After in Ethiopia, after the liberation war, Meles Zenawi up to now, even the political thinking, even the developmental thinking, even ideologically, they are still governed by his thoughts. And
so anybody who goes against that,
he centralized power into his hands, such that anybody you couldn't find anybody to fill his shoes because of the way he. First of all, he was a very intelligent guy. He had grown through the liberation struggle, and he had been in power for a long time, over 20 years. So Dessalines, the current prime minister, was never allowed to really completely take charge, first because he does not come from the same ethnic group as Meles Zenawi. Secondly, he's not very charismatic as him. And thirdly, because leaders from former Meles Zenawi's political party, the Tigrinya political party, they are still in control, whether in the military, whether in the political circle, even currently, they are still debating that. So,
and these are the kind of
the
changes
elite,
that
I'm telling you, therefore,
seem to be saying they want to see,
the elite,
not just the resignation.
The elite, therefore, even in South Africa currently, they have never bought into the leadership. That is the analysis I have read from some of the most respected people Ethiopian matters. And finally, I also want to comment on this issue of the problem in Ethiopia is not democracy.
Yes.
This is an issue I have heard from many Africans who think really Africa's main challenge is development, not democracy. There is no single issue. There is no single issue in any of these countries that made resignations or forced resignations of these leaders possible. It is a culmination of issues. Even in Ethiopia, we are talking about the economic imbalance, imbalance or structural problems in South Africa. But in Ethiopia, there is great disparity between regions.
And
so development, the state concentrates on development in the center. They decentralized, they assumed to decentralize political power, but political power was never followed by the budget. Not follow with, it was not effective power, it was informed. Even the issue of ethnicity in Ethiopia. People do not demonstrate against a ruling party simply because somebody comes from another tribe or political party. They demonstrate because their ethnicity takes away privileges. Therefore, when you have power, when you control the national purse, when you control the national budget, and you use it to reward people who look like you,
it will bring a problem.
It creates problems.
It creates problems.
No.
You don't agree, Lonzo?
I don't agree at all. I fundamentally disagree.
Let's take a look at this one. I can say a little bit of democracy is knocking on the doors of Africa, but the question is, are these new leaders ready to take it to the next step despite the pressure? Of course, another one here is why is it that all that happens to the countries which the citizens vote like we Rwandans vote? I don't know what that particular tweet does mean. Of course, we have several of them coming through. All you need to do is to just add the hashtag InFocusRW, and we'll definitely be able to read some of your tweets. Lonzen, you are not agreeing with this. Just very quickly, because I'm told also we are running out of time. Yes.
Well, I think that the folly of the Ethiopian political system was to think that you can build economic transformation on a structure of ethnicity, ethnic legitimation. That was the folly of the system. Now it is coming back to bite them because the fall of Meles Zenawi removed the moral and the political authority to be able to erect such a political system on an ethnic basis,
right?
Ethnic decentralization. And that was the problem. Now, the guy, Desalen, who replaced Meles, did not have the kind of legitimacy to be able to continue to erect this economic system on such a base, on such a social base. So and I think that is the major difference with Rwanda, for instance. Rwanda has refused to legitimate any form of ethnic political mobilization.
Right.
Because once you start that, you don't know where to end.
Right.
And that is the problem that's happening in Ethiopia. And before we move on, I think you promised the audience that you'll talk about Moses Shangara.
I know.
And it's unfortunate.
We are actually on the top of the hour.
On that point, let me point something.
Yes.
Zimbabwe and Mugabe, they had a conflict with the international economic system. And Mugabe, they put, so now this new guy, Mnangagwa, comes in, and somehow the international system does not condemn Zimbabwe for the coup that took place. Yet,
because finally there's a new guy who is not
they
Mugabe.
had beef, they had a problem with Zimbabwe.
Yes.
And this is the hypocrisy that we talk about.
Right.
And
of course, as you rightly say, we definitely were supposed to talk about Zimbabwe, of course, looking forward without the main opposition leader, Morgan Tsvangirai, who passed on last week. Of course, what we wanted to talk about was just what definitely will be the fate of this particular country as far as opposition is concerned as they head for the election. This is all the time we had for this particular conversation. Of course, it's a wide one which we hoped to be able to touch on various issues, but we'll definitely be able to have another conversation next week. Same time, same place. My name, as always, is Eugene. Anangwe. Good night.